seen over 25 plus years that actually even more important is the people, right? And let me just explain what I mean by that. That doesn't in any way minimize the philosophy, which is the interesting thing. See, when you come across advanced devotees, then what you're seeing is a dynamic personification of the teachings. You see? So in their character, in their behavior, and in their dealings, you're actually seeing in a very kind of relatable human form how that philosophy not only is applied in different times, places, and circumstances, but you're seeing what the philosophy does to a person, right? So when you're in the association of a very compassionate, kind person who's able to inspire people, build trust, all that kind of stuff, what you're being exposed to is the effect, and that's even more important in some ways than the philosophy itself. Because what can happen with the philosophy is that we may misinterpret it, we may not know how to apply it according to a particular circumstance, all of those things. So the sadhu, the devotee, is even more important. There's a literature called the Bhakti Tattva Viveka by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he asked, this question comes up, what's more important, the Acharya or the Shastra? And he says of the two things, the Acharya is more significant, right? Because the Acharya understands the purpose of the teachings and can present that in a dynamic way according to time, place, and circumstance. So it's a living personification of that. It covers more than just the reading, although that's not in any way to minimize the importance of reading and trying to reflect. So that's what I would say. The other thing I would say is that if we do what we can, Krishna will help us to do what we can't. Right? So start with the area of least resistance. Okay, I have trouble digesting the philosophy, but I love the kirtan. Great, go to the kirtan. It's not like you have to kind of beat yourself up because you can't do every single aspect of spiritual life. No, plug in, start somewhere, because it's the same way that we learn anything. We start with something that we can connect with, and it then branches out to other areas as well.
Perfect, thank you. So the next question after that is, and this was also a question from Sachinanda Maharaj's session, that how do we know when it's the mind or the super soul that's speaking to us? How can we make that distinction?
That's a good question. I remember being at Bhaktivedanta Manor, again, decades ago, and Radhanath Swami was asked the same question. I actually don't remember what he said was the answer. So I'm just going to answer it instead. But so yeah, there is a few things you can think about. Okay, the first thing is, if it's coming from the super soul, it's definitely going to be in line with scripture. Okay, so if you feel in your heart that Krishna is telling you to go to a McDonald's, trust me, it's not the super soul. Okay, let's start there. The second thing is, so actually this question, that was it. So I also heard the question asked to Shiv Ram Swami at the manor, and I remember what he said. It was a very good question. So the question came up, so how do you know if it's coming from Krishna or if it's coming from the mind? He said something very interesting. At that time, he said, you don't. He said, but if it's good advice, ultimately it's always coming from the super soul, if it's good advice. Now, what that means practically, so this is where I think you're getting to. What we're meant to do practically is, and this is mentioned by Prabhupada, first canto, chapter 19, text number 12, in the purport. Prabhupada says every major decision should be confirmed by some authority. He said, this makes the matter perfect. Now, it's interesting. We also see in Prabhupada's life, although he's a guru, a pure devotee, an acharya, if you read Lamrita, you will see constantly, when Prabhupada is going to do something, he will bounce it off the other devotees. Right? He bounced, and you can see it again and again, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and others. Why? This is also mentioned in Manu Samhita. So the way that the Vedic kings were trained, what they would do when they had some sense of what to do, they would still speak to their ministers. And the idea is that the ministers were to look for the gaps in the strategy, right? So I'm thinking to do this, but it's my I'm thinking to do it. I've made some calculation. I've used my intelligence. This is my conclusion, but I've got a blind spot. Okay, so what do you guys think? What have I missed out? And then in that way, it's a very practical thing. That way you can always keep yourself on track. So my own spiritual master, and this is in a seminar called Devotee Relationships Part 1 and 2, which is on btswami.com. In that seminar, he talks about this same point. He says, if you associate with the devotees properly, he said, Krishna will often use the devotees that you're associating with to give you the guidance and the direction that you need, you see? And it's also a practical way of developing humility. So there's 3 states, and two of them are unwanted. So there's one state where we just go with our mind. So whatever I think, that's just right. That's independence. You don't want that, because then your mind can become the guru and you can end up moving in a direction which is not healthy. The other side is also unwanted. We don't want to be dependent, where literally everyone has to tell you what to do. You know, wake up, chant your rounds, read, you know, eat, remember to breathe, all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to go the other extreme where you're dependent. What we're looking for is healthy interdependence, you see? And in that way, through Guru, Sadhu, Shastra association, that way there is no danger of us becoming deviated by the mind, and we can stay on track. Because even sometimes you may come up with a good idea, but you know what? When you bounce it off devotees that you trust, and if it's a specialism, devotees who have some competence in that area, then Krishna can use them to give you an even better idea. I remember bouncing some ideas of Radha Bhakti, right? So I had some, and actually, if you remember, there was something that you created, Radha Bhakti. It was like a proposition on some kind of like positioning statement. And it was like much better than anything I'd come up with, you know? And I thought, wow, yeah, if I just have the humility, and this is why it's important, by the way, because what you're trying to cultivate in Krishna consciousness is a mood of humility. You don't want to cultivate the mood that you can do it all by your own power, because if you do, Krishna will step back and he will let you do it by your own strength. And no one goes back to Goloka by their own strength. No one has the strength to walk from the material energy back to the spiritual world. But if you cultivate that interdependence, what Krishna will do, see, Krishna doesn't really care about religion in the sense of he's not about the formalities for the sake of the formalities. He cares about having a loving and affectionate relationship with you. So what he likes is that you interact with his devotees, because at the stage that we're at, he can bring his affection through the devotees. So when you feel cared for, loved, encouraged, inspired by them, you think, oh, wow, Krishna's really kind, right? It's a natural channel. Okay, so does that answer your question, Ananda Madhav?
We were just wondering, you quoted a verse in the beginning when you were giving this response. Can you just quote that again, just for some who missed it?
The verse I quoted when I was giving, yeah, so it's a purple, I said. So Prabhupada in Bhagavatam, 1st canto, chapter 19, text number 12. In the purple, Prabhupada says every major decision should be confirmed by some authority that makes the matter perfect. So one thing that's really important for you on this, actually, see, devotees don't really understand the philosophy properly. We think we do, but there's a lot more to it than we realize. And anyway, that's not to kind of bog anyone down, because you've got the essentials. But one of the things that will make your spiritual life fly is when you're making major decisions, get blessings. See, what the devotees don't realize, what we don't realize, when you get blessings, you're actually being spiritually empowered. The blessings that you receive is non-different to spiritual empowerment. So the class I just gave for you guys, what the prayers that I did in the beginning, that's to get the blessings of my spiritual master. And when I pray before a class, I don't actually pray to be inspired to give the class. I'll tell my spiritual master and Prabhupada, because I always pray to them together, I'll say, I don't know how to give the class. I don't have the knowledge. What I'm begging for is you give the class, but use me as the instrument. And I'm going to be really honest with you. So the class I gave on determination, should I say that? All right, I'm just going to say, I felt I wasn't fully prepared. But to be honest with you, it went much better than I expected. But I could understand in situations like that, it's just because there's grace. You see the point? So that's what you want. You don't want to play God, because actually Krishna loves you so much that if you take the position of a servant, he'll use you to do things which are far more powerful than you could do by your own ability, because he wants the devotees to get the credit. It really is like that. That's why humility is so powerful, because it's not about you being a doormat or being meek or being some kind of weak person. It's that if you're humble, you don't interfere with the flow of his spiritual empowerment, and you don't interfere with his plan to make you look good. Because that's what he likes to do. That he likes to glorify his devotees. He likes to give them praise. He likes to shower them with affection. He likes to give them gifts. He likes to make them feel loved and appreciated. He's so selfless. We put Krishna in the center, but Krishna, if the person doesn't block it by pride, he likes to put you in the center. It's not a mundane relationship. The more you put him in the center, the more he wants to put you in the center anyway, but if you don't block it by pride, he will quickly put you in the center, because he likes to serve his devotees. He enjoys serving more than he does enjoy being served. That's the esoteric reason why Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya, because he understood that being the servant of Krishna is actually more ecstatic than being God himself. Okay, next question.
So the next question is that how does one deal with faithlessness? It's sort of related, especially in ISKCON, where one is not able to find inspiration at their local center.
How does one deal with faithlessness where one is not able to find inspiration, especially in their local center? Okay, so there's something else I've been thinking about a lot, and it's really helped me actually, and I'm going to share it with you, because I'm going to go on inspiration. And I'm going to say, before I share the answer, this may not always feel so emotionally nice, but this is really important to understand. It's so important for all of us to understand. We all get different tests in Krishna consciousness. And the tests that we get in Krishna consciousness are the tests that we need in Krishna consciousness. So I'll be honest, I don't fully accept the premise that's being given. Even if you meet a situation where externally it looks like it's not so inspiring, that means there's still something that you can do. There's still, whether it's reading books of Prabhupada, whether it's going online to hear classes, whether it's becoming the inspirer of other people, whether it's whatever it is, it's not, oh, Krishna's not given me a way to progress, because that never happens, right? That actually never happens. It's rather Krishna's giving you a test. Okay, let's put this one on her. What's she going to do, right? And then what you're meant to do is do the best you can with the situation that you're given. And if you do the best you can with the situation that you're given, I guarantee you'll progress, because there's never a time that Krishna's love, mercy, affection, and encouragement is not available. Okay, so let's make it very practical. Let's say that I can't find inspiring association in my yatra. Okay, number one, you've checked with everyone in your yatra. Is that correct? That's question number one. Question number two, you've looked at every single service that's being done and every single service that can be done in your yatra, and none of them are inspiring at all, right? That's the situation. And there's no access to any of the books, any of the classes that you'll find inspiring. You've checked all of them, right? So what I'm saying is, it's about doing the best we can with whatever situation we're in. We all have our own battle of Kurukshetra. And you'll be surprised. What's easy for one person is really difficult for another person. So you may think your situation is difficult, but I guarantee you there'll be another devotee, maybe even on the call, who has a situation or circumstance that they think is much harder, you know, because we come in with different credits, different strengths, and different weaknesses from our previous lives. So I would say, and we mentioned it before, and I'll reinforce it, the question to ask yourself is, what can I do? And for this, I feel inspired to share with you this story. So in the concentration camps in Nazi Germany, Many people were being killed. It was an incredibly negative situation. And there was one person who escaped. I mean, there was a few people who escaped, but one person who escaped, and I think he kept some memoirs explaining how he escaped. He said he saw all of his colleagues, all of his peers around him, and they were just struck by fear, which is natural, let's be honest, right? It's a terrible situation to be in. And they were just paralyzed by that sense that we're going to die. And he started to realize, at one point, he said that I realized in my heart I was asking the wrong question. He said they were asking the question, when are we going to be the next people to be called, who are going to be, put into the gas chambers and die? He said, I caught myself asking that question. And when I caught myself asking that question, I realized I'm asking the wrong question. And he started to ask a different question. While all of the people around him were asking, when will I be next? The question he asked himself is, how am I going to escape? How can I get out? And then what happened is, because he started asking that question, a different question, it changed the way he started thinking about this situation. It reframed it. Now, what he noticed was that, when people were killed, then you'd have these mountains of dead bodies. So one evening, when he wasn't being watched, he stripped off all of his clothes and he laid on top of all the other dead bodies, pretending to be dead. So what happened was, when they moved the bodies, that basically became his opportunity to escape. And obviously, it's a very dire situation, but I want to focus you in on the principle. Yep, our lives are defined by the questions that we ask ourselves, right? So most people, okay, so why is this happening to me? Okay, that's one question, but it's not so empowering. Maybe a more empowering question will be, what can I learn from this? What is Krishna trying to teach me from this situation? How can I use this opportunity to move forward in life and to be more inspired? What can I do with the situation that I'm in? So I really want to encourage that empowering mindset, that mindset of empowerment. So the question is, with the situation that I'm in, what's the practical things that I can do to get as much inspiration as possible? And even if you get a little bit, start with that, and it will then become more and more and more. It's really, really important, and it definitely works. I've used this in my own life. I've seen this work in the life of other people. Does that answer the question?
Yes, Prabhu. So the next question, the next two questions are sort of related. So I'm just going to combine them into one.
But before you do, sorry, there's one more thing I feel inspired to add to the last question. They asked Prabhupada, why is Krishna consciousness so hard? He said, it's not that Krishna consciousness is so hard. He said, oftentimes our determination isn't where it should be, isn't as strong as it could be. He said our determination can often be weak. So please try the best that you can. And the reason for this is that in this life, whatever price we have to pay to be free of all suffering and to be in intense spiritual ecstasy for eternity, enraptured in love and loving association all the time, and in varieties of love, where that love builds upon itself and it goes up without any end. It's something we can't even imagine, but whatever price we have to pay for that kind of outcome forever, that kind of, whatever we have to pay, we don't have to do what Prabhupada did, by the way. We're not being sent in the age of, in our late 60s or 70s across the world knowing no one. We'll have something to do. But whatever price we have to pay for that kind of outcome is a small price, So, sorry, you wanted to ask another question.
Yes, Prabhu. So the next question is that, what do you mean? You had used this phrase, there are no bad days in spiritual life. So the first part is, can you explain what you mean by that? Because some days it does feel that there's so many obstacles in our spiritual life, even when we try so hard. Yeah. It is hard to remember that there are no bad days in spiritual life.
Absolutely. So it's all around how we frame something. And this is why I'm often encouraging the devotees, see, your enthusiasm and your determination is shaped by the way you perceive the world. And the way you perceive the world is actually shaped by the knowledge that you actually have. So there's a story of one village, and there was a family, and husband, wife, son, and one day the horse in that family ran away and disappeared, and all the villagers said, oh, I'm really, it's just bad luck, your horse has just run away. And the husband of the family said, good luck, bad luck, who knows. The next day that horse came back with another horse, so he had two horses, right? So people realized, oh, okay, he was right. Then another time, his son, so the man's son, was actually trying to mount the horse, and the horse kicked that son, and the son was knocked out and he had to rest and so on. And all the villagers said to the man, oh, again, just really bad luck, and he said, good luck, bad luck, who knows. Later on that same day, the entire village it was announced by the king of the village that the village are going to war, and they wanted the sons of all the families to actually be fighting on the front line. But because that son had had that incident, that son was spared. So the point is that we judge things oftentimes based upon a very limited perspective. I often think about what Tamal Krishnamurti said about Prabhupada. It was an incredible revelation to me. He was mentioning how if you read Lilamrita, for the first year that Prabhupada comes to the West, no one listens to him. Now, I just want you to get the full gravity of this. This is a Nitya Siddha coming from the spiritual world. It's not like someone who's trying to be Krishna conscious. He's from the spiritual world. Prabhupada remembered having a conversation with Krishna. Prabhupada spoke about this. He told one of his disciples, I was in the spiritual world with Krishna. And Krishna said to me, I want you to come. He pointed to the material world and said, I want you to go down there and preach. And Prabhupada, what his response was? He said, no way. So I'm not going to do it. And Krishna said, look, I want you to go. He said, I'll bring my books with you and I'll let you live in nice places. And Prabhupada says, so therefore I came. When Prabhupada, even before coming to the West, if you read Lilamrita, he's preaching in India. India is called Punya Bhumi. One of the names for India, it's a place of piety, right? In India, they didn't listen to him, right? They wanted to be like the Westerners. One of the things he realized is that if I go to get the Westerners, then when I bring the Westerners back to India, everyone's like, wow, oh my God, they're taken to our religion, and then they'll pay attention. So he wasn't listened to in India. He came to the West first year, no one listened to him. In fact, if you read Lilamrita, he actually writes, it's mentioned in there, he would go back to the docks thinking this is a failed mission. He was thinking, I need to go back to India. Now he told his disciples later on in the movement, he said he realized looking back that at the time of all these challenges, that Krishna was just strengthening him for what lay ahead. So this is what I mean by perspective. So we may think that something happens to us in a short vision, and we may think this is bad, but it could be the very thing that makes you. It could be the very thing that makes you. My own mentor used to tell the story about the king who got a sword as a gift. So the king was cleaning his sword. It was a very valuable sword made of precious metals and precious jewels. The king cuts himself when he's cleaning the sword. So the king calls for his advisor and he says, my advisor, what do you think about this? And the advisor says, my dear king, this is Krishna's mercy. The king gets angry, like, what? What are you talking about? Tell me again what you said. And the advisor said, my dear king, this is Krishna's mercy. And the king got so angry, he said, you're just saying that because you're not in pain. You're not bleeding. You've not cut your finger. You impotent fool of an advisor. And the king told the guards, take my foolish advisor and pull him in prison. And so the guards came and put the advisor in prison. Then the king was on his daily tour of the kingdom. And as he was on the tour of the kingdom, he went through the forest and he was captured by cannibals, right? I mean, they literally saw the king and they thought to themselves, prasadam time, Sarah Vijayal. That's how they looked at it, right? So they thought, okay, we've got something for lunch now. They were preparing the king for a human sacrifice, to kill him and offer his body. As they were about to do this, the priest told the rest of the cannibals, stop and let this king go. And they were shocked. It was like, we thought we were looking forward to lunch. Like, what's going on? And the priest explained, we can't offer this person in the sacrifice. He's an imperfect specimen. Look at his finger. Part of his finger's missing. So then they let the king go, and the king got back to the kingdom and got back to his palace. And when he got back, he realized the wisdom of his advisor. So he called the guards and told them, bring my advisor back out. And he apologized to the advisor. He said, look, you know, I didn't really understand what you said at the time, but you were absolutely correct. And then the king explained, I went to my daily tour of the forest. In the forest, or my tour of the kingdom, I went through the forest. I was captured, they were going to kill me, but because I'd cut my finger, I was spared. Now the king asked the advisor one last question. He said, so therefore I understand how when I cut my finger, it was Krishna's mercy, you were right. But the king said, there's one thing I don't understand though. He said, when you told me, I got angry and I had you thrown in prison. So I understand how cutting my finger was Krishna's mercy on me, but having you thrown in prison, I don't understand how that was Krishna's mercy in relation to you. And the advisor said, my dear king, he said, normally when you go on your tour of the kingdom, normally I accompany you. So actually, what would have happened if I had gone with you on that day, they would have spared you and they would have taken me and killed me instead. So when you cut your finger, that was Krishna's mercy upon you. And when you got angry with me and had me thrown in prison, that was also Krishna's mercy upon me. So this is often how things work. What you think may be your greatest challenge or difficulty, it could actually be the thing that will make you.